I ran into Chuck Schumer today in Brooklyn, and he had on a mask that said "cancel student debt," which I appreciated a great deal from the majority leader. I know there's been some discussion as to whether Joe has the ability to cancel student debt via executive order, and then some people have gone back and forth. I'm going to go on the record and say if I were president, I would certainly be testing my ability to do that. That's like, let's see if we can do it. Do you have a point of view both on the ability to cancel student debt and then the wisdom of doing so?
It's hard to say. Like I listen to lawyers who know this area of the law really well, and they make very persuasive arguments. And in a world where I thought the way things worked was that if you had sound legal arguments for something, you got to do it. I'd say, yes, he absolutely can do it. And it's just a matter of making sure that he follows the Administrative Procedures Act or whatever he has to do to make it lawful when done. But in the world we actually live in, the question of whether he can do it or not is going to be answered perhaps by a very skewed Supreme Court. And I have no idea what they're going to say.
Oh no, this new Supreme Court.
Because the court is not like a natural ally of the Biden administration. What do you do about that? Well, one argument is you got to move fast because you're very likely to run into legal issues with the Supreme Court and have to take a second bite at things or whatever. The flip side of that is that if you move too fast and you don't dot all your I's and cross your T's, then the work you do might end up getting thrown out on some sort of legal technicality as opposed to the substance of the law. So I think that probably explains part of why we're going to probably cross the 100-day threshold and he won't have forgiven any student debt. But there are other considerations too. I think that, in an environment where you have just passed a $2 trillion coronavirus relief bill and you want to pass another very large bill that won't be fully financed, if you're going to play footsie with inflation, maybe you want to see what happens with those before you write off another several $100 billion in student debt. And that may be part of the reason why they're not racing to do this. I think there's a third issue to consider, which is if you're going to do something like that, which polls pretty well, will definitely make a lot of your own voters enthusiastic, likely to show up at the polls. Do you maybe want to try to do it closer to an election? I think that all of those factors are probably contributing to the internal debate in the Biden administration over what to do, when to do it, how big to go.
That's fascinating. You're right that it would be hundreds of billions of dollars if it was going to be significant at all. I think the level of education debt out there right now is 1.6 trillion last I checked.
I'm operating from memory here, but I think that the smaller relief idea that Biden has embraced at $10,000 worth of student debt and phase out is somewhere in the $300 billion range, and the Schumer Warren plan, the sort of $50,000 just forgive as much debt as you can, is about $1 trillion. So it's a lot of money. It's not it would have been a no-brainer, I think, in an environment where Mitch McConnell was running the Senate and had said no to the American Rescue Plan. Well, then you need to get money out the door, and that's a freebie. Just do it.
Some students right now are wincing at this.
I know. Well, that's the thing is that for all these any kind of stimulus, like the nice thing about the rescue plan is that it was very broad based. Like it's a few people, relatively speaking, myself, yourself, perhaps, who got have gotten no COVID relief over the last year. We're like in the small minority of people who don't qualify, and basically everyone else gets a stimulus check. Many people get unemployment, et cetera, et cetera. The student loan plan is comparably much more targeted, and so when you stop talking about aggregates, the huge sums of money being distributed broadly, and start talking about individual programs, and you say, well, because we did this one thing, now maybe we have to take a pause on the other thing. Well, then the constituency that would benefit from that is like, well, I was told that I was going to get my student loan forgiven. When's that going to happen? But, a promise is a promise. I expect it's coming. I don't think he's going to renege.
Well, that's great news to a lot of people. And one of the things I did suggest, which the American Rescue Plan Act does address in large part, is that you want to get money out very broadly. Like, you don't want to pick a certain segment of the population and say we're going to help you and not necessarily get help to others. So what is your prognosis for the infrastructure bill? What are we looking at, Brian? You know, because there's so many people that want a lot of things in there. And let me also say on the record, I love it all. Like, just about everything I've seen, I'm like, sure, throw it in there. So what are you seeing and hearing in terms of, it could be at this point, individual legislators and like their pet issues, like what they will and won't accept, the ultimate size of the bill. I've seen something in like the $2 trillion range, I believe. Is this also going to be a bill that gets no Republicans? I get the sense that it probably will be from what I'm hearing.
Look, in a world where the filibuster were to be abolished or reformed, if Democrats were to do that before reaching the jobs plan, you could imagine a world where you break that bill up into different pieces, and some Republicans, maybe a handful of them, support this piece but not that piece, but mostly Democrats pass the whole thing in piecemeal. But because the rules of the Senate are what they are, and it seems like the question whether they're going to abolish or reform the filibuster is now kind of in doubt, you have to do it as one giant package and put it through the budget process so that you can circumvent the filibuster. So that makes it hard. You have to hold all 50 senators together, all like make sure that nobody's like ideas that they care deeply about are omitted. Also not add ideas that are viewed as sort of poison pills to Joe Manchin on the one end or Bernie Sanders on the other. You have to find a method of paying for it that isn't raising taxes too aggressively or not paying for enough of it, and not because there's necessarily a right answer to that question, but because you need all 50 members to agree, and that's a hard thing to do. Part of me thinks it's sort of like too big to fail in some sense. Like, I don't think Democrats want to go into the midterms having dealt Joe Biden a very big defeat, because he's basically said this is what we need to do, and like he's put his whole administration behind it. And that gives me like some hope that it'll pass. But for that to happen, I think Democrats have to embrace that feeling, the sort of psychology that they had after the rescue plan passed, right? Where they didn't let their peccadillos eat away at the bill until it fell apart or became too small. There wasn't a lot of rancor. That bill passed and everyone was happy and everyone thought they did a good thing. And everyone felt proud. If they can kind of repeat that process where they say, there'll be a time to fight for my pet project on future bills, but for this bill, what we need to do is limit the amount of rancor within our own ranks. And we also need to move quickly, and we need to, satisfy ourselves with very small trims around the edges as opposed to big changes. Then they can just do it and it'll pass. They'll feel good about it again. And then they can resume squabbling over, the more trivial issues that divide them. The risk is that, there's no deadline to pass this bill. This bill will seemingly have a tax component. So it's just harder to get that kind of agreement, to get people to agree to set aside their priorities and just trust that Joe Biden's plan is the right plan. And I think it sort of remains to be seen whether they can do that. It'll be a big feat if they do. And it'll be a big legacy piece for Biden, but also for Chuck Schumer in a way.
My advice to Democratic legislators is get addicted to victory. You know that feeling you had, that win, you were like, we're helping hundreds of millions of people. Everyone's going to love us. People are going to get those $1,400 checks. People are going to get this child tax credit. Like, we're going to be heroes. Just get addicted to that. Just be like, that was not enough.
Yeah, I read a newsletter once a week, and this was writing about this exact topic. And I compared the advice I had for them to the advice that you get from like the worst baseball coach in Little League, who like watches you hit a home run and is just like, do that again. Like, do that again. That is useless in baseball. but I think legislating is actually a very complicated thing, but given the limitations that Democrats have, they have 50 votes. Everyone needs to be on board. So everyone's potentially a kingmaker. Anyone could spoil this thing. So basically everyone has to agree not to do that. Once you get that kind of consensus that we have to just move, then I think it's possible. And it's not a model of legislating that I think you'll see repeated a lot in history if they do it. Legislation tends to the acrimonious, but I think it's, it is possible because of what you say, like the rescue plan was a huge win. They feel good about it. So why not repeat the process?
I find myself cautiously optimistic somehow because we need to do a lot more. And the Biden administration, frankly, rests on being able to get a significant infrastructure bill passed. When I spoke to Joe not that long ago, he literally said to me, we need to rebuild the country. And this is the bill to do that. He meant literally, too. It's like, we literally need to rebuild the country.